Upon arriving at my house after 2 weeks away, my daughter-in-law greeted me by yelling from the living room as if I were a stranger. "What is that witch doing here? Get out of my house right now." Her words hit me harder than anything I had ever felt before. She was pointing her finger at me inside my own property, in the house I bought with my own sweat, with my hands cracked from cleaning other people's floors. I simply took my purse off my shoulders, walked in with firm steps, and replied, looking her straight in the eyes, "This house is mine. It's not your doghouse." I showed her the door. My son, Robert, didn't even try to stop me. He stood there, looking down, like a coward. And in that moment, I knew that what would happen next, neither of them would ever forget. But to understand how I got to that instant, I have to tell you who I am. My name is Donna Miller, and I am 72 years old. All my life, I worked cleaning other people's houses, taking care of children who weren't mine, ironing clothes for people who never knew my last name. I never complained. I never begged. I never held out my hand expecting someone to give me anything for free. Every dollar I earned, I saved with discipline. Every cent I put away was with the thought of having my own roof, a place where no one could tell me what to do or how to live. And I did it. I bought this house 20 years ago, when I still had the strength to work double shifts and my knees didn't hurt so much. It's small, yes. It has 2 bedrooms, a modest living room, a kitchen that smells of coffee every morning, and a yard where I grow my plants. But it's mine. Only mine. I lived alone since my husband died almost 15 years ago. Robert, my only son, got married and moved out. I never asked him to stay. Children grow up and fly away, that's natural. But I always thought he would at least respect me, that he would remember everything I did for him. The nights I stayed up late sewing clothes to sell so I could pay for his school. The times I ate less so he could eat more. The sacrifices a mother makes in silence, without expecting medals or applause. I was living peacefully. My routine was simple but dignified. I would get up early, make my coffee, water the plants, sweep the patio. Sometimes my friend Sandra Olson would visit, a good woman who lives 3 houses down. We would sit in the kitchen, drinking tea and talking about life, about memories, about nothing and everything. She is one of those friends who don't judge, who don't criticize, who are just there when you need them. Sandra is my age, maybe a year younger. She was also widowed, but she had better luck with her children. They visit her every week, take her to the grocery store, ask how she's doing. I never felt envious of that. I only felt something akin to sadness when I saw how little Robert worried about me. He called once a month, if that. And when he did, it was just to ask if I was okay, but without truly waiting for an answer. Everything changed when my sister Claire called me from the other state. She was sick, very sick. She needed someone to take care of her because she couldn't move on her own. Her children live far away, in another country, and couldn't come. So she called me. And of course, I went. Because that's what you do when family needs you. You drop everything and go. I told Robert I would be gone for 2 weeks. He told me not to worry, that the house would be fine. I trusted him. I locked everything up, watered the plants, said goodbye to Sandra, and took the bus to the city where Claire lives. It was a long 2 weeks. My sister was suffering a lot. I slept little, cooked for her, bathed her, gave her medicine. I didn't complain. It was my duty. But deep down, I missed my home. I missed my bed, my kitchen, my plants, the silence of my patio. I counted the days until I could return, and when the moment finally came to go back, I felt happy. I took the bus back with a light heart, thinking of arriving, making a good cup of coffee, and resting in my armchair. I never imagined what awaited me. When I got off the bus and walked towards my street, something seemed strange to me. There was a car parked in front of my house, a car I didn't recognize. I thought maybe it was a neighbor visiting someone, but when I got closer, I saw it was right in front of my door. I took out my keys slowly, my heart starting to beat faster. Something was not right. I opened the door, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't the smell of my house. It was a sweet, cloying perfume that I didn't wear. The lights were on. There were shoes at the entrance, women's shoes that weren't mine. I stood there, with my purse hanging from my shoulder, trying to understand what was happening. I walked slowly towards the living room, and there he was, Robert, my son, sitting in my armchair, watching television as if nothing were wrong. He turned around when he heard me come in and looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't joy. It was something like discomfort. "Mum," he said barely, "I wasn't expecting you today." "What do you mean you weren't expecting me?" I replied. "I told you I was coming back today. What is going on here, Robert?" He didn't answer. He just stood up and scratched the back of his neck, nervous. And then I heard her. A woman's voice coming from my bedroom. My bedroom. The most sacred place in my house. The only space that was always just mine. "Who is it, Robert? Did that old woman finally leave?" I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. I walked towards my room and opened the door without knocking. And there she was, Stephanie Woods, my son's wife, sitting on my bed, with her clothes thrown over my sheets, her creams and perfumes on my dresser, her shoes under my window. She looked at me as if I were the intruder. "What is that witch doing here? Get out of my house right now." Those were her exact words, and she yelled them at me, pointing her finger as if I were trash, as if I were nothing. I couldn't move for a few seconds. I just stood there in the doorway of my own room, looking at this woman who was shouting at me as if I were a stranger. Stephanie was leaning back on my bed, legs crossed, painting her nails a bright red color that was staining my white sheets. My sheets. The ones I washed and hung out in the sun before I left. "Did you hear me? Get out of here. This is my house now." Her voice was sharp, full of venom. But what hurt the most wasn't her words. It was seeing Robert standing behind me, not saying a word, not defending me, not even trying to silence her. He was just looking at the floor like a scolded child with his hands in his pockets. "Robert," I said without taking my eyes off her, "are you going to explain what this means?" He swallowed and cleared his throat. "Mum, it's just that we needed a place to stay, just for a few days. The apartment where we were living. We had problems with the landlord. He asked us to leave. I thought that since you weren't here, we could stay until we found something." "Until you found something," I repeated slowly, feeling the anger starting to rise from my stomach to my throat. "And it didn't occur to you to call me, to ask for my permission?" "We just didn't want to bother you," he mumbled. "We knew you were busy with Aunt Claire." Stephanie let out a dry, contemptuous laugh. "Oh, please. You don't have to give her an explanation. Robert, this house is empty most of the time. What difference does it make if we use it?" I felt something break inside me. It wasn't an explosion. It was something deeper, like a silent crack opening in the center of my chest. I walked slowly towards the dresser and saw all her things there. Her expensive creams, her imported perfumes, her makeup scattered on the wood that I had cared for years. I opened the closet and saw her clothes hanging next to mine. Dresses, blouses, shoes thrown on the floor. Everything mixed together as if she had a right to be there. I turned around and stared at her. She was still painting her nails, as if none of this mattered to her. as if I didn't exist. "This house is mine," I told her in a firm but calm voice. "I bought it with my labor, with my sweat, with years of sacrifice, and you have no right to be here without my permission." She looked up and smiled mockingly. "Oh, yeah? And what are you going to do? Kick me out?" "Please, Mom, I am your son's wife. We are family. You should be happy to help us." I didn't move. I just looked at her in silence, feeling how every one of her words stuck into me like pins. But I wasn't going to give her the pleasure of seeing me cry. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg her to leave, because I knew that in that moment, if I lost control, she would win. I took a deep breath and turned back to Robert. "I want you to take your things out of my bedroom, right now." "Mum, please," he said in a weak voice. "Just let us stay a few more days. I promise you that." "I am not interested in your promises," I interrupted him. "I want you to take everything out of here. This is my house. And if you are going to stay, it will be under my rules. But my room is mine. No one sleeps there except me." Stephanie got off the bed with a sharp movement. "Your rules? Who do you think you are? We are here because Robert is your son. You have an obligation to help us." "I have no obligation to you," I replied, looking her straight in the eyes. "And if you think I'm going to allow you to disrespect me in my own house, you are very wrong." She took a step toward me, arms crossed, and that look of superiority that sickened me so much. Robert did nothing. He just stood there, like a useless shadow. And in that moment, I understood something I had never wanted to accept. My son was not the man I thought I had raised. He was a coward, a man with no backbone who let his wife humiliate me without lifting a finger. "Fine," I finally said. "Stay, but take your things out of my bedroom right now, or I'll take them out myself." Stephanie laughed in my face. "You're not going to do anything, Mom, because if you do, Robert is going to have to choose, and believe me, he's not going to choose you." Her words hurt more than I would have imagined, because I knew she was right. Robert wasn't going to defend me. He wasn't going to put her in her place. He wasn't going to do anything. And that was the saddest part of all. I left the room without saying anything else. I walked toward the kitchen, my legs shaking and my heart pounding in my chest. I sat down in one of the chairs and stayed there, staring at the table, trying to breathe. I felt that everything I had built, everything I had cared for years, was being invaded by someone who didn't deserve to be there. I heard their voices from the room. Stephanie was yelling at Robert, telling him I was a bitter old woman, that I had no right to treat her like that he had to put me in my place. And he didn't say anything. He just listened to her. He just followed her like an obedient dog. I got up and started walking through the house. I needed to see everything. I needed to understand how far they had gone. I opened the kitchen cabinet and saw that my plates were mixed with others I didn't recognize. Cheap plastic plates she had brought. In the refrigerator there was food I hadn't bought. Drinks, sauces, things I never used. Everything was mixed up, messy, as if someone had broken in to plunder my life. I went to the bathroom and saw her products there too. Expensive shampoos, conditioners, body creams, everything taking up the space where I kept my things. I opened the cabinet and my towels were thrown on the bottom, wrinkled, while hers were folded and ordered on the top shelf. I felt a cold fury run through my body. It wasn't an explosive rage, it was something worse. It was a deep, silent indignation that made me clench my teeth and close my fists. But I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead with them to leave. Because I knew that was exactly what she wanted. She wanted to see me weak. She wanted to see me broken. I went back to the living room and sat down in my armchair. Robert came out of the room with a tired face that didn't make me feel sorry for him. He sat down across from me and tried to talk. Mom, I don't want to hear you, I told him without looking at him. I don't want your excuses. I just want to know one thing. How long were you planning to stay here without telling me? He looked down. I don't know. A couple of weeks, maybe, until we got money for another place. And then what? Were you going to disappear without telling me? Were you going to let me come back and find my house empty as if nothing had happened? It's not like that, Mum. I was going to talk to you. I swear. Your promises mean nothing, Robert, because if they meant something, you wouldn't be here now. You wouldn't have allowed that woman to talk to me like that. You wouldn't have let her disrespect me in my own house. He didn't answer. He just sat there, hands between his legs, looking at the floor as if he was searching for something to say, but couldn't find it. And I looked at him in silence, feeling the motherly love I always had for him starting to mix with something darker, disappointment, sadness, controlled rage. Fine, I finally said. Stay, but this is my house, and my rules are respected here. Understood? He nodded without looking up. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the noises of my own house that now felt strange. I could hear their voices on the other side of the wall. Stephanie was talking loudly, not caring if I heard her. She was laughing, making contemptuous comments, and Robert didn't say anything to silence her. He only mumbled things I couldn't understand. I got up early, as always. I prepared my coffee in silence, trying to regain some normalcy. But when I opened the cabinet to take out my favorite mug, it wasn't there. I looked for it in the sink, on the dish rack, and found it thrown in the dishwasher, dirty, with traces of lipstick on the rim. Stephanie had used it. I felt something hot rise in my chest. It wasn't just a mug. It was my mug, the one I had used every morning for years, the one my husband gave me for our anniversary. And she had used it without asking, carelessly, as if everything of mine was hers, too. I washed it carefully, breathing deeply, trying to calm myself. But with every passing second, it became harder to control what I felt. I made my coffee and sat down at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the patio. My plants were still there, but they looked neglected. No one had watered them in 2 weeks. The leaves were dry, some fallen on the ground. I went out to the patio and started watering them one by one. It was the only thing that calmed me down at that moment. Feeling the earth between my fingers, seeing how the water soaked the roots, taking care of something that depended on me. While I was doing that, I heard the door of the room where they were sleeping open. Stephanie came out in a robe, hair loose, yawning as if she owned the place. She entered the kitchen without greeting me. She opened the refrigerator and took out the carton of milk I had bought before I left. She poured herself a glass without asking and drank it standing there, looking at me through the window with an expression of annoyance. "Do you always get up this early?" she asked with a mocking tone. "It's noisy. It won't let me sleep." I didn't answer her. I kept watering my plants, ignoring her, but she wasn't willing to leave me alone. "Besides, this house is very cold. I don't know how you can live like this." "Robert!" she yelled toward the room. "You need to fix the heater. One freezes in here." Robert came out too, looking like he had just woken up, and went straight to the kitchen to find coffee. He glanced at me, but didn't say anything. He just made his cup and sat at the table, avoiding my gaze. I came in from the patio and sat across from him. Stephanie stood next to the sink, arms crossed, watching us as if waiting for me to do something she could use against me. "Robert," I said calmly, "we need to talk." He nodded without looking up from his cup. "Yes, Mum." How much money do you have saved to look for another place? He was silent for a few seconds, stirring his coffee with the spoon unnecessarily. Well, not much. We're a little tight right now. How much? I insisted. I don't know. About $200, maybe. Stephanie scoffed. And what are we going to do with that? It's not even enough for an apartment deposit. You know how rents are now, Mum. Everything is so expensive. I didn't ask for your opinion, I replied without looking at her. I am talking to my son. She laughed sarcastically. Oh, right. Because he's your perfect little son, isn't he? Well, let me tell you something, Mom. Your perfect little son doesn't have a stable job. And if it wasn't for me, he would be sleeping on the street. I felt my blood boil, but I controlled myself. I took a deep breath and looked back at Robert. Is that true? You don't have a job? He shrugged. I lost the last one 2 months ago. I'm looking, but it's not easy. Everyone asks for experience in things I don't know how to do. And what have you been spending your time on these past 2 months? I asked him in a firm voice. Looking for work, Mum. I swear. I've sent out resumes. I've gone to interviews. But nothing is coming through. Stephanie interrupted again. That's why we need to stay here. We have nowhere to go. And you live alone in this big house. I don't understand what the problem is. The problem, I said, standing up from the chair and looking her straight in the eyes, is that you entered my house without my permission. The problem is that you treat me as if I were the intruder. The problem is that you don't have an ounce of respect for me, or for what is mine. She held my gaze with a cold smile. Oh, please, don't play the victim. You should be grateful that your son still remembers you, because with how unbearable you are, I wouldn't come even if they paid me. Those words were like a punch to the stomach. I looked at Robert, expecting him to say something, to silence her, to defend me. But he just stayed there, sitting in silence, looking at his coffee as if it were the most interesting thing in the world. And in that moment, I knew. I knew I wasn't going to get any help from my own son. I knew he had chosen, and he hadn't chosen me. I turned around and left the kitchen without saying anything else. I went to my room and locked the door. I sat down on the bed and stayed there, breathing slowly, feeling the tears wanting to come out, but I wouldn't let them. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to give that woman the pleasure of seeing me broken. I took out my phone and called Sandra. I needed to talk to someone. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't overreacting. Donna, she answered in her warm voice. Are you back? Yes, Sandra, I'm back, but I need you to come over. Please. What happened? She sounded worried. I can't explain it over the phone. Just come. I need you. She didn't ask any more questions. She told me she would be at my house in a half hour, and she hung up. I stayed sitting on the bed, staring at the closed door, listening to Robert and Stephanie's voices in the living room. She was still talking loudly, complaining about everything. That the house was old, that the furniture was ugly, that the bathroom needed remodeling. And Robert didn't say anything. He just listened to her. I felt a sadness so profound I almost couldn't breathe. Was this how it was all going to end? After all I had worked for, all I had sacrificed for my son, was this how he was going to repay me? By letting his wife humiliate me in my own house? When the doorbell rang, I got up quickly and went to open it. It was Sandra. She was carrying a bag of sweet rolls and her worried look. What happened, Donna? She asked as soon as she came in. I hugged her without saying anything, and she hugged me back, tightly without asking. We stood there in the entryway for a few seconds, and I felt that at least I had someone on my side. Come on, I said to her. Let's go to the kitchen. I'll make you some tea. We walked towards the kitchen, and when we entered, Stephanie was still there, sitting at my table, painting her nails again. She looked up and stared at us with disdain. "Who is this?" she asked, without even greeting us. Sandra looked at me, confused, but I touched her arm to calm her down. "She is my friend," I replied to Stephanie coldly, "and she has more right to be here than you do." Stephanie let out a fake laugh. "Oh, how funny! Now you're going to bring your little friends to defend you? Pathetic." Sandra took a step forward, but I stopped her. "She's not worth it," I whispered to her. "Let's go out to the patio." We both went out to the patio and sat on the plastic chairs I had there. Sandra was looking at me, waiting for an explanation, and I didn't know where to start. "Donna, what is going on? Who is that woman?" "She's my daughter-in-law," I told her in a tired voice. "Robert's wife. They moved into my house while I was gone, and now they won't leave." Sandra just stared at me in silence, processing what I had just told her. I saw her expression change from confusion to indignation. She pressed her lips together and shook her head. "Unbelievable. Are you telling me they walked in without your permission?" she asked in a low but firm voice. "And Robert allowed that woman to talk to you like that?" I nodded without saying anything. The words were stuck in my throat. Sandra took my hand in hers and squeezed it tightly. "Donna, this is not right. You cannot let them treat you like this in your own home. You have to put a stop to it." "I know, Sandra, but I don't know how to do it without everything exploding. He is my son. I don't want to lose him." She looked at me with those eyes full of wisdom that only years can give. "You've already lost him, Donna. The Robert you raised wouldn't let anyone disrespect you. That man inside is no longer your son. He's her husband." Her words hurt because they were true. Robert had changed since he married Stephanie. Before, he called more often, came to visit me, asked me how I was. But since she came into his life, everything was different. The visits became shorter, the calls more spaced out. And when he did come, she always found some excuse to criticize something. That my house was small, that my furniture was old, that I cooked with too much salt. At first I thought he was just adjusting to his new life, that it was normal for him to put his wife first. But now I realized it wasn't adjustment, it was submission. Robert had become someone I didn't recognize. "I'm not going to beg them to leave," I told Sandra in a firm voice. "I'm not going to yell or fight. But I'm also not going to let them keep disrespecting me." "Then what are you going to do?" she asked. I was silent for a few seconds, thinking. Looking at the plants I had watered that morning, feeling the warm sun on my face. And then I knew exactly what to do. "I'm going to make life impossible for them," I said in a low voice. "I'm going to make them regret coming into my house without permission, not with yelling, not with fighting, but with actions. I'm going to show them that this house has an owner, and that owner is me." Sandra looked at me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Be careful, Donna. That woman looks capable of anything." "I know. That's why I'm not going to give her reasons to play the victim. Everything I do will be within my rights. This is my house, and I call the shots here." We stayed on the patio for a while longer, drinking tea that I made with the last mint leaves I had. We talked about other things, trying to distract ourselves. Sandra told me about her grandchildren, about a neighbor who had fallen, about the everyday life I had left behind during those 2 weeks. But my mind was somewhere else. I was planning every move. When Sandra left, I went back into the house. Robert was watching television in the living room. Stephanie had gone out, he told me without my asking. She went to the supermarket. I sat down on the armchair across from him. "We need to talk," I told him. He turned off the television and looked at me with that scolded child face that irritated me so much now. Tell me, Mum. I want you to understand something very clearly, Robert. This is my house. I paid for it. I take care of it. And as long as I live, no one is going to treat me like a stranger here. Do you hear me? He nodded. Yes, Mum. I spoke to Stephanie. I told her she has to be respectful. Oh, really? And what did she tell you? He looked away. She said she was nervous, that it's been difficult for her too, that she didn't mean to disrespect you. Lies. I saw her. I heard everything she said, and she did it with every intention in the world. Robert sighed. Mom, please. We're going through a difficult time. We just need a little time. Fine, I said, standing up. You'll have time, but under my rules. And the first rule is this. My bedroom is mine. No one enters there without my permission. The second, everything you use in this house, you leave it clean and put back in its place. And the third, respect. If your wife cannot respect me, then she doesn't stay here. Is that clear? He nodded in silence. I left the living room without waiting for an answer. I went directly to my bedroom, and I took an old box out of my closet, where I kept important papers. Inside were the house deeds, the payment receipts, everything that proved this property was mine. I reviewed everything carefully, making sure everything was in order. Then I searched online from my phone. I wanted to know what my rights were. What could I do legally to get them out of here if necessary? And I found the answer. As the owner, I had every right to ask them to leave. But there was a process. I had to give them written notice, an eviction order. That same afternoon, I went to a stationery store downtown. I bought padlocks, 5 padlocks with their keys. I also bought a folder and some paper. I was going to do everything right, everything legal, nothing she could use against me. When I got back home, Stephanie had already returned. She was in the kitchen preparing something that smelled strong and unpleasant. I walked past her without greeting her and went straight to my room. I closed the door and started writing. I wrote a formal letter addressed to Robert and Stephanie. I gave them 3 days to vacate the property. I explained that they had entered without my consent and that they did not have any lease agreement. Everything was calmly worded. No insults, no emotions, just facts. When I finished, I printed 2 copies at the neighborhood library that I walked to, one for each of them. I returned home and placed them on the living room table where they couldn't ignore them. That night, during the dinner I prepared only for myself, Robert found the letters. I heard him talk to Stephanie in a low voice, surprised. Then he knocked on my bedroom door. Mum, can I come in? No, I replied from inside. Whatever you have to tell me, you can say it from there. Is this serious? He asked in a trembling voice. Are you going to kick us out? It's serious. You have 3 days. Mum, please. We have nowhere to go. You should have thought about that before coming in without permission, before disrespecting me, before letting your wife treat me like trash. He was silent for a few seconds. Then I heard his steps walking away, and then the voices. Stephanie was screaming, furious. She was saying I was a bitter old woman, that I was going to regret it, that she was going to sue me for abuse. Robert tried to calm her down, but his voice sounded weak, defeated. I stayed sitting on my bed, listening to everything. And I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sadness. I only felt something akin to relief. For the first time in days, I had done something. I had taken control. The next morning, when I left my room, the house was silent. Robert and Stephanie were still asleep. I went to the kitchen and made my coffee as always. But this time, when I opened the cabinet, I took out the padlocks I had bought. I started with the pantry. I took everything that was mine and stored it in my room. I left only the things they had brought. Then I put the padlock on the pantry door. I did the same with the cabinet where I kept my good dishes, my frying pans, my quality pots. I left only the basics, and I put a padlock on it. When I got to the refrigerator, I hesitated for a moment. But then I remembered how Stephanie had used my milk without asking, how she had filled my refrigerator with her things without permission. So I took out all of mine, and I put a padlock on the refrigerator too. I was finishing up when I heard footsteps. Robert came out of his room and stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at the padlocks with a confused face. "Mum, what did you do?" "I protected what is mine," I replied calmly. "If you're going to be here, you're going to use only your things, not mine." "But how are we going to cook? How are we going to eat?" "That is your problem, Robert, not mine." Robert just stood there, staring at the padlocks as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He opened his mouth to say something, but closed it again. He didn't know what to argue, because deep down he knew I was right. This was my house, and if they wanted to stay, they were going to respect my things. Stephanie came out minutes later, still in her pajamas, with messy hair and an angry face. When she saw the padlocks, her expression changed from surprise to fury in a second. "What is this?" she yelled, pointing at the refrigerator. "Are you crazy? How are we going to store our food?" "It's not my problem," I replied without getting upset. "You can buy a small refrigerator if you want, or eat out, but my things are mine." She took a step toward me with clenched fists. "You can't do this. It's inhumane. Robert, say something to your mother. Tell her she's acting like a maniac." Robert just looked down. He didn't say anything, and that infuriated her even more. "You're useless," she yelled at him. "Your mother is humiliating you, and you just stand there like an idiot. Do something." I left the kitchen and went to the bathroom. I closed the door and washed my face with cold water. I could hear her screams from there. Stephanie was insulting, threatening, crying with rage. Robert was trying to calm her down with soft words that were useless. And I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 72-year-old woman who had worked all her life. A woman who had raised her son alone. A woman who didn't deserve to be treated like this. I dried my face and left the bathroom. I walked through the living room without looking at them and went straight to my room. I locked the door and sat on the bed. I took out my phone and looked up the number of a lawyer a neighbor had recommended to me years ago. I dialed and waited. "Good morning," a professional voice answered. "Miller and Associates Law Firm." "Good morning. I need to consult about an eviction. Are you available today?" They gave me an appointment for that same afternoon. I hung up and took a deep breath. This was serious. There was no turning back now. The rest of the morning was tense. Stephanie locked herself in the room she shared with Robert and didn't come out. He stayed in the living room, watching television without paying attention. I got ready, putting on my best dress, the one I wore for important occasions. I carefully did my hair and put on the earrings my husband had given me. I wanted to feel dignified. I wanted to remind myself who I was. Before leaving, I knocked on their door. "Robert," I said, "I'm going out. I'll be back in a few hours." "Where are you going?" he asked from inside. "I have an appointment. That's all you need to know." I didn't wait for a reply. I took my purse and left the house. I walked to the bus stop, feeling the sun on my face. It was a beautiful day. The sky was clear, and there was a gentle breeze moving the leaves on the trees. I sat down on the bench to wait and closed my eyes for a moment. I thought about everything that had happened. how my life had taken such a drastic turn in just a few days. But I also thought about what I was doing, and I knew it was the right thing. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't being vengeful. I was only defending what was mine. The bus arrived, and I got on. I paid my fare and sat by the window. I watched the streets go by, the houses, the people walking with their normal lives. And I wondered how many of those people were also fighting silent battles. How many were also being disrespected in their own homes. I arrived at the law firm a half-hour later. It was a small but clean building downtown. I went up the stairs to the second floor and knocked on the door. A young secretary greeted me with a kind smile. "Mrs. Miller?" she asked. "Yes, that's me." "Mr. Davis is waiting for you. Please come in." She led me to a small office where a man in his 50s was sitting behind a desk full of papers. He stood up when I entered and offered me his hand. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Miller. I'm Mr. Mark Davis. Please have a seat." I sat down across from him and explained the whole situation. I told him about my trip, my return, how I found Robert and Stephanie living in my house without permission. I told him about the humiliations, the insults, the contempt. He listened carefully, taking notes. "I understand," he said when I finished. "This is a clear case of unauthorized occupancy. As the owner, you have every right to demand they vacate the property." "How long does that process take?" I asked. "It depends. If they refuse to leave voluntarily, we would have to file a formal lawsuit. That can take weeks, even months. But there is a faster way." "What is it?" "An emergency eviction order. It is filed when there is conflict in the living situation and the owner feels threatened or disrespected in their own home. With the right evidence, a judge can order the eviction in a matter of days." "What evidence do I need?" "Witnesses, if there are any, text messages, recordings, anything that demonstrates the mistreatment. I also need the property deeds and a signed statement from you explaining the facts." "I have the deeds, and I have a witness. My friend Sandra was present when Stephanie insulted me." "Perfect. We can start with that. I will prepare the documents today. You come back tomorrow to sign them, and we will present them to the judge. If everything goes well, you will have the order in 2 days." I felt an enormous sense of relief. "Thank you, Mr. Davis. You don't know how much this means to me." "I understand your situation, Mrs. Miller, and believe me, you are doing the right thing. No one has the right to disrespect you in your own house, not even your son." I left the law firm feeling lighter. I had finally taken the definitive step. It was no longer just threats. It was no longer just padlocks. It was something real, something legal, something they couldn't ignore. I returned home on the evening bus. When I arrived, the door was open. I went in and found Robert sitting in the living room with a worried look. "Mom," he said, standing up, "we have to talk." "There is nothing to talk about, Robert. Please, just listen to me." I stopped and looked at him. There was something in his expression that I hadn't seen before. He seemed scared. "Stephanie is very angry. She says she's going to call the police. She says you're abusing her." "Let her call whoever she wants. I haven't done anything illegal. This is my house, and I have the right to protect my things." "Mum, please, I don't want this to end badly. We're family." "Family is based on respect, Robert, and you haven't respected me since you arrived. Give me one more chance. I promise I will talk to her. I will make her understand. You've had many chances, and you wasted them all." I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and sighed deeply. I was tired. Not physically, emotionally. Tired of fighting. Tired of justifying myself. Tired of begging for respect. I didn't eat dinner that night. I wasn't hungry. I just went to bed early and tried to sleep. but the noises of the house kept me awake. I heard Robert and Stephanie arguing in low voices. I heard footsteps, doors opening and closing, and at some point, I heard something that put me on alert. They were trying to force one of the padlocks. I got up silently and opened my door just a crack. I saw them in the kitchen, trying to break the pantry padlock with a screwdriver. Robert was holding a flashlight while Stephanie pried at it. I felt a rage I hadn't felt before. I came out of my room and turned on the kitchen light. They froze, like thieves caught in the act. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked in a cold voice. Stephanie dropped the screwdriver. "We're hungry. You won't let us use anything. What do you expect us to do?" "I expect you to be respectful, but I see that is impossible for you." Robert tried to explain. "Mum, we just wanted—" "Get out of my kitchen. Now." They didn't move. Stephanie looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "You are a cruel old woman. I don't know how Robert can be the son of someone so wicked. And I don't know how my son could marry someone as shameless as you." We stood there, staring at each other. Robert was between the two of us, not knowing what to do. And then Stephanie took a step toward me. Stephanie took a step toward me with clenched fists and a set jaw. For a moment, I thought she was going to hit me, but I didn't step back. I stood firm, looking her straight in the eyes, without fear, because I knew that if I showed weakness, she would use it against me. "Go ahead," I told her in a calm voice. "Touch me. Give me one more reason to call the police." She stopped. Her chest was rising and falling with ragged breaths. Her eyes were shining with rage, but she knew I was right. Anything she did now would only make her situation worse. Robert took her arm. "Let's go, Stephanie. This is not worth it." She yanked free roughly. "Don't touch me. This is your fault. For being a coward. For not defending your wife." "I am not attacking her," I said calmly. "I am just protecting what is mine. If she cannot understand that, the problem is hers, not mine." Stephanie shot me one last hateful look and left the kitchen. Robert stood there for a few seconds, looking at the floor, not knowing what to say. "Go, Robert, and take that screwdriver. The next time you try to force something that doesn't belong to you, I will call the police. It doesn't matter that you are my son." He picked up the screwdriver with trembling hands and followed Stephanie. I heard them arguing in the room. Their voices were a constant murmur that lasted for hours. And I stayed in the kitchen, checking the padlocks to make sure they hadn't managed to damage any of them. Everything was fine. I went back to my room, and this time I put a chair against the door. I didn't feel safe, not in my own house. And that hurt me more than any insult. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, listening to every noise, every creak of the wood, every step in the hallway. My mind wouldn't stop thinking. How far were they going to go? What else were they capable of doing? The next morning I got up early, as always. I made my coffee in silence and went out to the patio. The fresh morning air helped to clear my mind. I watered my plants. I swept up the fallen leaves. I tidied up some potted plants that were out of place. It was my routine. It was what kept me sane. Sandra arrived shortly after noon. She knocked on the door, and when I opened it, she was carrying a bag of food. "I brought you lunch," she said with a smile. "I know you haven't been eating well." I hugged her, grateful. "You don't know how much I needed to see you." We went into the kitchen and she saw the padlocks. She shook her head sadly. "Donna, this is very wrong. You can't keep going like this." "I know. I went to a lawyer yesterday. I'm going to file for an eviction order." "Seriously?" she asked, surprised. "Seriously, I can't take it anymore. Sandra, I tried to be reasonable. I tried to talk, but they don't understand. They only understand when it hurts them. She put her hand on my shoulder. I'm proud of you. I know it's not easy, but you are doing the right thing. We ate together on the patio, away from the room where Robert and Stephanie were still locked up. We talked about everyday things, trying to distract ourselves, but I couldn't stop thinking about what was coming. When Sandra left, I went back into the house. I had to go to the law firm to sign the papers. I got ready again. I put on the same dress as yesterday because it was the only one that made me feel strong. I took my purse and left without telling anyone. At the law firm, Davis already had everything prepared. He showed me the documents. He explained every point, every clause. I read everything carefully before signing. With this, Mrs. Miller, we can present the order tomorrow morning. The judge will review it, and if everything is in order, they will approve it that same day. Then an officer will come to deliver it personally. From that moment on, they have 48 hours to vacate. And if they don't, I asked, then the police intervene. But believe me, when they see the official order, most people leave. They don't want legal trouble. I signed all the papers with a firm hand. Each signature was one more step toward recovering my peace, toward recovering my home, toward recovering my dignity. Thank you, Mr. Davis, for helping me. It's my job, Ma'am, but it's also the right thing to do. No one deserves to be mistreated in their own home. I left the law firm feeling that I had made the final decision. There was no turning back now. In 2 days, 3 at most, they would be out of my house. When I got back, the house was silent. I thought maybe they had gone out, but when I walked past the room, I heard low voices. They were there, planning something. Surely. I went to the kitchen and unlocked my private pantry. I took out rice, beans, a little chicken I had saved. I cooked for myself alone. The smell filled the house, and I knew they were smelling it. I knew they were hungry, but I didn't care. When I finished cooking, I served myself a plate and sat down to eat at the kitchen table. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, enjoying my food in my house. And I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel pity. I only felt that I was doing what I had to do. Robert came out of the room when I was finishing. He stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at my plate with hungry eyes. "Is there anything for us?" he asked in a quiet voice. "No," I replied without looking at him. "There is a store on the corner. You can buy something there." "Mum, we don't have any money." "That is not my problem, Robert. You decided to stay here without my permission. Now you face the consequences." "But we're your family." "Family is earned with respect, not with blood." He was silent for a few seconds. Then he asked something I didn't expect. "Why do you hate us so much?" I looked up and stared him straight in the eyes. "I don't hate you, Robert. I would hate you if you still mattered to me. But you don't anymore. I no longer care if you are hungry. I no longer care if you are uncomfortable. I no longer care if you feel humiliated, because I have felt all of that since you arrived, and you didn't lift a finger to prevent it." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mum. I really am sorry." "Your apologies are late, son. Too late." He turned around and went back to the room. I heard him talk to Stephanie. She yelled something I didn't quite understand. And then there was silence. I washed my plate, stored the leftovers in a container with a padlock, and locked everything up again. Every movement was a declaration. This is my house. These are my things. And you are not entitled to anything. That night, I slept a little better. knowing that the order would arrive at any moment, that soon all this would end, that soon I would have my house to myself again. The next morning, Mr. Davis called me early. "Mrs. Miller, I have good news. The judge approved the order. They are going to deliver the notification this afternoon." I felt an enormous weight lift from my chest. "Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you very much." Be prepared for what comes next. Sometimes people react badly when they receive these notifications. If you feel you are in danger, call the police immediately. "I will. Don't worry." I hung up and sat on my bed, breathing deeply. Today was the day. Today, everything changed. I got dressed carefully. I put on my best clothes. I did my hair well. I even put on a little lipstick. I wanted to be presentable when the officer arrived. I wanted Robert and Stephanie to see me as dignified, firm, unbreakable. I waited in the living room, sitting in my armchair, watching the time on the wall clock. Every minute seemed like an eternity. Robert and Stephanie hadn't left the room all day. They were probably expecting me to give in, to get tired of this silent war. But they were wrong. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. I got up slowly and went to open it. It was a uniformed man with a folder in his hand. "Mrs. Donna Miller?" he asked. "Yes, that's me." "I have a court notification for Mr. Robert Miller and Ms. Stephanie Woods. Are they at this address?" "Yes, they are here. Please come in." The officer entered, and I knocked on the bedroom door. "Robert. Stephanie. Come out. There is someone who wants to speak with you." The door opened slowly. Robert came out first, looking confused. Stephanie came out behind him, frowning. "Who are you?" she asked when she saw the officer. "I am an officer from the civil court. I have come to deliver an eviction order." Robert and Stephanie froze. The colour drained from their faces. Stephanie was the first to react, taking a step toward the officer with an incredulous expression. "What did you say? An order for what?" The officer held the papers out to them. "An eviction order issued by the civil court. The owner of this property, Mrs. Donna Miller, has requested that you vacate the property. You have 48 hours from this moment to leave the residence with all your belongings." Robert took the papers with trembling hands. His eyes scanned the words, not truly understanding what he was reading. Stephanie snatched them out of his hands and started reading aloud, becoming more agitated with every word. "This can't be legal. She can't just kick us out like this. We're family." The officer maintained his professional tone. "Mrs. Miller is the sole registered owner of this property. You do not have a lease agreement or any document that gives you the right to remain here. The law is on her side. If you do not comply with the order within the established timeframe, forced eviction will proceed with police intervention." Stephanie looked at me with a hatred so intense I could almost feel it physically. "You did this. You are leaving us on the street." "I did what I had to do to regain my peace," I replied calmly. "You had the opportunity to leave peacefully. You chose to stay while disrespecting me. Now face the consequences." Robert continued to stare at the papers as if he expected the words to change. His face was a mixture of shock and betrayal. "Mom, you can't do this. We're your family." "You stopped treating me like family the day you allowed your wife to insult me in my own house," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "The day you walked in without permission. The day you made me feel like a stranger in the place I built with my sweat." The officer interrupted. "If you have no further questions, I will leave. The papers contain all the necessary information. If you require legal advice, you can consult a lawyer. But I recommend you comply with the order. Good day." He left the house, leaving a heavy silence. Robert was still standing there, holding the papers as if they were a death sentence. Stephanie, on the other hand, began pacing in circles, breathing heavily, trying to control her fury. This is unbelievable. This is abuse. I'm going to sue her. I'm going to call a lawyer and I'm going to sue her for abuse, for family abandonment, for everything. Go ahead, I told her calmly. My lawyer will be waiting for your call. In the meantime, you have 48 hours. I suggest you start packing. We are not leaving, she said, crossing her arms. You can't force us. The police can, and they will if necessary. So you decide. You walk out on your own with some dignity, or you leave escorted by the police for all the neighbors to see. It makes no difference to me. Robert finally spoke. His voice sounded broken. Mum, please, give me a chance. Talk to me. We can fix this. There is nothing to fix, son. I have already made my decision. But we have nowhere to go. That is not my problem. You should have thought about that before. Stephanie let out a bitter laugh. You know what? You're right about one thing. You are cruel. You are a cruel, bitter old woman who is going to end up alone. And when you're on your deathbed, no one will be there to hold your hand. No one will cry for you, because you drove away your only family. Her words were meant to hurt me. They were meant to make me feel guilty, to make me doubt. But they no longer worked. I had already cried all the tears I could cry. I had already felt all the pain I could feel. I prefer to die alone and in peace than to live with company and be humiliated, I replied to her. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do. I turned around and went to my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed. I could hear their agitated voices on the other side. Stephanie was still yelling, blaming Robert for everything. He tried to calm her without success. And I just breathed deeply, feeling how every second brought me closer to my freedom. That afternoon, I called Sandra and told her everything. She came over immediately, worried about how they might react. Do you want me to stay with you tonight? She asked. I don't like you being alone with them, knowing they are desperate. I'll be fine, I told her. But thank you for worrying. Donna, these people are capable of anything. Be careful. I will. I promise that if anything happens, I will call the police immediately. Sandra stayed with me until it got dark. We drank tea on the patio, talking about everything but the situation. I needed a moment of normalcy, a break before what was coming. When she left, I went back inside. The house was strangely silent. Robert and Stephanie were in their room with the door closed. No voices could be heard. No movement could be heard. Just silence. I got ready for bed, but this time I locked the door and also put a chair under the doorknob. I didn't feel safe. I didn't know what they were capable of now that they felt cornered. The night passed slowly. I slept little, always alert to any noise. But nothing happened. When morning came, I woke up tired but relieved that it had passed without incident. I left my room and went to the kitchen. I made my coffee as always, trying to maintain my routine. But everything felt different. The atmosphere was charged, dense, as if the house itself was waiting for something to explode. Robert came out shortly after. He had deep circles under his eyes and a haggard face. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. He sat at the kitchen table and looked at me with pleading eyes. Mum, I need to talk to you. Please. There is nothing to talk about, Robert. Yes, there is. Please. Just listen to me for 5 minutes. I sighed and sat across from him. You have 5 minutes. He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I know I ruined everything. I know I should have defended you from the very first moment. I know Stephanie crossed the line and I was a coward for not putting her in her place. But Mum, please don't leave us on the street. Give me one last chance. I swear things are going to change. Things don't change, Robert. People change. And you're not going to change because you don't want to. You chose your wife over your mother. And that's fine. It's your right. But I also have the right to choose myself. But we're your family. Family isn't just blood, son. It's respect. It's love. It's mutual care. And you didn't give me any of that. His eyes filled with tears. If you kick us out, I'll never forgive you. That's your decision. I've already made mine. He got up from the table with abrupt movements. Fine. If that's what you want, fine. But don't expect me to come back. Don't expect me to call. Don't expect anything from me ever again. I never expected anything from you, Robert. Only respect. And you weren't even able to give me that. He left the kitchen, slamming the door. I heard him talk to Stephanie, telling her to pack, that they were leaving, that they would never return. And I stayed sitting in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for the son I lost. Relief for the peace I would soon regain. For the rest of the day, I heard them packing their things, drawers opening and closing, clothes being put into bags, rough movements that made noise, but they didn't come out of the room. They didn't talk to me. They didn't look at me. I stayed in the patio most of the time, watering my plants, sweeping, tidying up, mentally preparing myself for the moment they finally left. When night fell, they were still there,